This story is called Lamb to the Slaughter, and it has been written by Roald Dahl. The story is about Mary Maloney, who is pregnant, and she's married to Patrick, who's a detective. One day Patrick comes home from his job. He takes his normal night drink, and he tells Mary something. We don't know what he tells her, but it shocks her, and it seems that he's about to leave her. So in this state of shock, she insists that she makes him supper. And then she goes to the freezer and she gets a leg of lamb. And as she makes her way back to the kitchen, she passes her husband Patrick, and she then hits him in the head with the leg of lamb. So he falls to the ground and he appears to be dead. Being the wife of a detective, Mary knows the penalty of murdering someone is quite harsh, and then she decides to cover up this murder. So she goes upstairs and she looks in the mirror and she makes herself seem calm, and then she goes downstairs and she goes to the grocery store. And at the grocery store she tells the man in the shop that her husband came home late and he was too tired to go out for dinner, and then she had to make supper for him, and so on and so on. So she likes to tell him this whole story, so she has a kind of an alibi. And then she goes back to find her husband still lying on the floor, still dead. And she calls the police, crying and pretending that she just came home from grocery store and found him like that and didn't know that he was lying there. So the police come and they investigate the house, and they ask a lot of questions and take some pictures. And after a couple of hours they have been there, she tells them that she still has the leg of lamb in the oven, because she was going to make supper for her husband. And she asks them if they don't want something to eat because they seem very hungry. And the policeman thanks her, and they go out in the kitchen and helps themselves. And in the kitchen she hears them talking about if they could find the murder weapon. That would help them a lot while they're eating the leg of lamb. So she sits in the living room and giggles a bit. The story is a short story, and it's told in a third-person narrative, and it's told at past tense. The main character, Mary, is a normal housewife, and she takes good care of her husband, and she's very loving towards him. You can see that right down here when he comes home. She took his coat and hung it in the closet. Then she walked over and made the drinks, a strongish one for him, a weak one for herself, and soon she was back again in her chair with the sewing, and he in the other opposite, holding the tall glass with both his hands, rocking it so the ice cubes tingled against the glass side. And here you can see that he's like this. He goes out and he works, and then he comes home and she's like ready with the dinner and makes him drinks, and she's very fond of him. Towards the story, right about when she murders her husband, it's right about right down here. At that point, Mary Maloney simply walked up behind him, and without any pause, she swung the big frozen leg of lamb high in the air and brought it down as hard as she could on the back of his head. She likes this thing that he tells her right up here. It shocks her that much that she changes dramatically from this loving, daring, sweet housewife to this cold-blooded killer, and she gets this whole new personality where she's not vulnerable and helpless, but she suddenly takes the matter in her own hands, and she makes a plan, and she goes to the grocery store and so on and so on, and she tricks all of these police people. And that happens quite dramatically. The environment is quite nice, actually. It's almost like it's happening in the 50s or so, because she's so wifey against her husband, and the whole making him a drink and taking his coat, and the way she just talks about him. There's a small part down here that I like to read. She loved to luxuriate in the presence of this man, and to feel almost as a sunbather feels the sun, the warm male glow that came out of him to her when they were alone together. She loved him for the way he sat loosely in a chair, for the way he came in a door or moved slowly across the room with long strides. She loved the intent, far look in his eyes when they rested on her, the funny shape of his mouth, and especially the way he remained silent about his tiredness, sitting still with himself until the whiskey had taken some of it away. And it's this whole way she looks at him, and this whole way her relationship towards him is, we see why she snaps at that point, because when she loves him so much, it's hard to hear something that makes him say, I want to leave you. And of course she feels this. She can't lose him because he's so important to her, and this we see especially in the first part. Also, she really wants to make him dinner, and she's very excited that he's home and so on. The language of the story is quite normal, but some parts, especially when Patrick comes home, they tell each other hulu, hulu, and she answers hulu, and that may say something about they have a kind of an accent or something. Well, at least there's not much of direct talk, but the few parts where there are, it seems like they're very polite, and they seem like they have a bit of an accent. I don't really know which accent that is, but some of an accent. Yeah. It's a crime story because there happens a murder, and there's some clues, and there's some police people, and the way it ends, it's like very open ending, where it ends with her sitting in the living room listening to the police people. And personally, this is an officer saying this, personally I think it's right here in the premises, probably right under our noses. What do you think, Jack? And in the other room, Mary Maloney began to giggle, because this obviously also has something to do with the title, Lamb to the Slaughter, because the murder weapon is a leg of lamb, and then they like eat the murder weapon, so it's right in front of them. Really, a little joke from the author. Yeah, and there's some small crime elements. It's not like you can't really go in and say a lot of crime elements, but it's there's been a murder, and there's some clues, and there's a detective, and there's a murderer, and there's yeah, it's a common crime story with the villain as the main character, and we know what has happened. And also the motive is quite common as well. The whole she don't want him to leave her. The composition is quite normal as well. The point of no return is about where she kills her husband, because as soon as she kills her husband, the story is running. You don't know what she's going to do, and it's weird that it doesn't stop there. It just moves on and moves on. And as I said before, the ending is open, so we don't know what's going to happen after the whole story, and we don't know who's going to get blamed for the murder. Some of the messages in the story might be that you should never judge a book by its color, because Mary seems very sweet and like this perfect housewife, but in real life she's vicious and cold-blooded, and lets no one stand in her way for what she really wants, which is happiness, and that's kind of driven her mad. The story is a quite nice crime story, and it's a normal crime story. You would find it in a novel, maybe. Well, not in.